To those of you who have just joined us, good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Unlocking Employment Opportunities, Navigating Transportation and Housing Barriers for Autistic Adults. My name is Trudy and I am your host for today's event. It's great to have you all here today, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing today's speakers, Pam Blanton and Kelsey Calder. Pam Blanton's career has spanned 30 years in special needs housing. As a housing coordinator in Seattle, she has assisted around 450 people with IDD with their move into housing over a 5-year period and has built an in-depth working knowledge of how to help people navigate SSI, SSDI, state residential support, Medicaid-funded personal care services, supported employment income, and Section 8 housing subsidies. Her career goal and company's mission is to empower families to create housing solutions that meet the unique needs of their loved ones with IDD and create a real solution for the future. Kelsey Calder is recognized as the first nationally certified travel training instructor. She was a licensed special education teacher for 10 years. Kelsey works for GRTC as their travel training instructor, a role in which she created and implemented GRTC's first travel training program specializing in individuals with disabilities and senior citizens for the past 9 years. The program has trained over 275 individuals and groups through one-on-one training, personal mobility device training, and bus orientations. And without further ado, I'll now turn it over to you, Kelsey. Go ahead and take it away.
Good afternoon. Thank y'all for having me. I am GRTC's travel training instructor. And so what that means is I am the, let me make sure it's going. Oh. I'm having trouble advancing the slides. There we go. All right, so excuse me, I apologize. So I actually teach people how to use our public transportation system. So while today I am in Richmond, Virginia, which y'all might not be in Richmond, Virginia, but hopefully from what I'm going to teach you, you can apply that to what you can find in your city. So in GRTC's service area, we have buses that are called fixed route buses. Those are going to be like your regular city buses that you will see. They follow a specific route. There's a stop and start point. Our buses are numbered. So we have the 19. We also number buses maybe with letters. So like the 7A. Right now our buses are free, but when they did cost money, it was still very inexpensive, only 75 cents to $1.75 per trip. And then for your whole day, you could ride as many buses as you want. It was only $3.50. We also have express buses, and so we label ours again with numbers, but then we put an X at the end. So those are like commuter buses. They travel on the highway, and they might even look like a Greyhound bus or something a little different. We also have a bus rapid transit system in our actual, system-wide area. It's kind of mimicking a subway because they do have stations instead of bus stop poles, and they are given the right-of-way, through stoplights. They have their own bus lane, so that's going to be different than a fixed route system. And then we also have paratransit services. So that is curb-to-curb service. Ours is, again, free right now, but when it did cost money, it was $3 to $6 per ride. So again, inexpensive. The paratransit is going to be a shared ride service. So you might get picked up and then dropped off, or I might get picked up, you might get picked up, and then I get dropped off before you. So it just depends. We also have something called Care on Demand, which is kind of like Uber and Lyft. So that is in addition to the paratransit services that we offer. And that is going to be no shared ride service. But so in your area, you should definitely have a paratransit service, and that on-demand paratransit service might not be available, but I would just check your local provider. We also have microtransit, which is on-demand travel for anyone. And we have different zones. And so microtransit's different than paratransit, because paratransit, there's an eligibility process, and that eligibility process is usually disability or age-based, meaning senior-based, but microtransit is open to anyone. This is a picture of our Link vans. That's our microtransit service. As you can see, they have stairs going up in the front, but in the back, there's a door. So if you do use a mobility device, you can get on and off the vehicle as well. And this is just a picture of one of the zones that we have. And all of our zones, or almost all of our zones, tie into our fixed route system. So that green line is one of our fixed route buses. And so the microtransit can actually link up, hence the name Link, to our fixed route service. And so more people can access without using a vehicle. And this is just kind of a picture of our service area. So you can see it's very large, at least for, you know, by Richmond size. We can go all the way to the airport, all the way, you know, out west, north, south. So in your area, you might, you know, it might not be as extensive, or it might be even more extensive, just depending on where you live. And then so people always ask me, how do I know where the bus goes? I don't know how to read a map. It's been years since I've seen a bus schedule. So Google Maps actually ties in, at least, you know, I would think, to most transit companies. And so at the top of, you know, when you type in directions, it's always going to pre-populate to car directions. But that little transit icon, it kind of looks like a train or a bus. You can toggle over to that, and that will actually tie in. If you have public transit in your area, that will tie in to the fixed route system in your area. So you don't need to know what bus to catch, because it's going to tell you right there. And so this is just more Google Map images and how you can pick. So on the left-hand side, I'm going from a career academy to a mall, and I can change when I want to leave, what day, and then that box down at the bottom, for us, like I said, we number our buses, our routes. So that's the 18 route. So when I'm looking for the bus, I want it to say 18 on it. And you can also change. So if you did have bus, maybe light rail, and a subway in your area, they would show the different modes of transportation that you could pick from. This is a map of a fixed route bus schedule. And so as you can see, it gives you the kind of the whole area the bus goes, and then those lettered points, so A, B, C, D, all of that, those are just time points. So a lot of people get confused and think that those are the only bus stops along the route. Those are just time points for the driver. So that just means the driver has to be aware of the time when they are driving and make sure they're not going too fast or too slow. We also have our own app, and we also have the transit app. The transit app is free, and also I believe in most cities as well with the public transportation. So sometimes if you don't like Google Maps or Apple Maps, you can try transit app too. So this is a picture of a bus stop pole. This is going to be for fixed route for us. The information on here, it tells you a lot. So one thing that is different is that snowflake. So that means that if there's ever inclement weather with snow or ice, that the bus stop is still serviced. The stop number, that 3774, that is specific to that bus stop. So that means no other bus stop has that number. So when you call the customer service number below on the bus stop flag, you can tell them I'm at bus stop 3774 and they know exactly where you are. Also, it says the 19 West Broad Street, that's the 19 bus. West Broad Street is the direction it's going. And then daily, meaning it comes every day. So this is a picture of one of the front of our buses, as well as the bus stop pole. So the 18 is prominently displayed on the front, and you can actually put bikes on the bus. You just have to use the bike rack in the front of the bus. Our bus stop, or our buses, do not have stairs anymore. They're low floor, and in the front of the bus as well, that is where the ramp would pop up if you needed it. So there it is with the ramp. So if you needed to walk up, or if you needed to use your mobility device to walk on, you can do that as well. So again, this is just another picture of the front of the bus. This is our number 1, it's going northbound. So inside of the bus, all of our buses look the same. I believe most buses, if they are, you know, I think there are only a couple companies that sell buses. So your buses in your area should probably look like this as well. In the front of the bus, that's where people with mobility devices, the seats kind of flip up and you can sit inside. Either that red writing on the left-hand picture or that LCD screen on the right side, that tells us what bus stop is next. And so that's how you can kind of plan your route. Though that is where a mobility device would go on the left-hand side. So as you can see, the buses, the seats flip up and the operator can help you. And then on the right-hand side, that is a picture of someone pulling the cord or signaling to get off the bus. So that is something you need to do on fixed route buses. You do have to signal to get off because the bus does not stop at every stop unless there's a person standing at the bus stop or someone signals to get off the bus. This is a picture of one of our pull stations, so our bus rapid transit stations. They all look the same. And as you can see at the top, that's going to give you real-time bus arrival for our bus rapid transit. We call ours the Pulse. So it's not numbered. And then the black in the front on that with the yellow, that's where the bus stops, the front door. So you can always kind of gauge if you need to walk on the front part of it, you know where the bus is going to stop. There are seats and it's sheltered, so it's a little different than a bus stop pole. This is what one of our Pulse buses look like. It is different colored. It just says westbound or eastbound because we only have one BRT line right now. But yes, so all of it will look the same for the Pulse. And so travel training is kind of what I'm doing right now virtually. But for in Richmond, it's free for anyone age 15 and older. And we offer 3 different variety of services. So we offer the one-on-one travel training. That is something that would be if you were to call up your transit service or maybe your area on aging, they would have someone actually teach you from your home to the bus stop to where you want to go on the bus and then back home. So that's what I do. Everyone's program is a little different, but for ours, our program is free and is open, you know, to anyone 15 and older, and we can teach anything. So if you just need help with maybe utilizing the apps, or if you want to learn how to read a bus schedule, I can do that. We offer personal mobility device training for our paratransit customers. So that means if you are eligible for our paratransit van, that's the one that comes to your home, you can actually come to GRTC and practice getting on and off our fixed route buses for free. You do not have to do it. We just wanted to offer that to our customers. And then bus orientation training is also free. And this is good for groups or seasoned bus riders who just need, you know, one trip maybe with me, and then they kind of can figure out how to do it themselves. So in your area, you might have all these services, some of the services, but these labels should be able to kind of help gear your questions. So if you do not have public transit in your area, you can always practice pedestrian street skills, crosswalks, doing pedestrian signals, crossing with a stoplight, what to do if there's construction, maybe identifying some of the vehicles in your area. Maybe you don't have fixed route buses, but you have a micro transit system, just identifying them. And then also identifying if you have a bus operator, that's a bus driver, we call them operators. You can identify them out in public. You can use the map app to plan trips. I've had people just use the map app to figure out walking directions places because they do not have public transit in their area. We do have some how to ride YouTube videos that might be beneficial to you in your area. They're very generic, but they are transportation vocabulary heavy. So you can also figure out how much money you'd save by taking public transit versus Uber or Lyft. Always dressing for the weather. If you do have public transit in your area, but you're not unsure about it, you could always follow it if you have someone with you, follow the bus in a car and just kind of see where it goes, see who gets on and off. And then if you have no public transit at all, a mobility manager might be in your area, and that's a good person to get in contact with. Or if you have a disability advisory board in your area, just to see what kind of transportation options that there are. All right, so this is just another picture of one of our paratransit vans. It looks just like our Link van. And so on our website, we have different ways to apply for our caravan. But yes, so that is it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, Pam, it's all yours.
Thank you. There we go. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Pam Blanton. I'm the founder and CEO of Partners for Housing. We're going to talk about housing a little bit today. I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about our housing solution. We have a benefits and housing review that helps people understand the benefits they may be eligible for. We also have a roommate matching pool, and we help families create shared living homes. We're also going to talk about accessing Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher, which is a great subsidy to help people afford housing. But I'm going to start with sharing a video to give you an idea of what we do here at Partners for Housing.
Before we started working with Partners for Housing, I didn't feel like there were very many options. I think we thought Troy would be living at home forever.
We just didn't have the direction. Partners for Housing gave us a path forward.
Because I couldn't imagine anything worse than her having lived with us all her life, losing her parents, and then having all of that disrupted. So we really wanted her to move out while we were still alive and while we could support that transition.
When we found Partners for Housing, they immediately stepped in and kind of embraced us as a family.
Families worry about who will care for their loved one when they're no longer able, and about the costs of housing and care. They worry about loneliness and isolation. It can seem impossible to make a realistic, achievable plan for the future.
The biggest worry for a parent is that your child is going to grow up into adulthood and not have community.
My neighbor has one of them.
Gaining access to the benefits your loved one is eligible for can be very challenging. There are so many government agencies and social service programs. It's hard for families to find the best solution.
It's a complicated system, right? And there's a lot of emotion attached to it as well. So when you're in an emotional state, you're not always at your most rational, or you don't always think clearly, and trying to figure out the systems by yourself is, you can do it, it's just really difficult and time consuming, and there's a lot of bumps along the way.
Partners for Housing helps families maximize their benefits and create housing solutions that meet the unique needs of their loved ones. The first step is to complete the residential assessment. This assessment will identify gaps in your loved one's benefits and services and help clarify your family's vision for the future.
And when we connected with Partners for Housing and started going through the residential assessment, we discovered layers of services that could be available if we knew how to tap into them.
The residential assessment includes a comprehensive review to ensure your loved one has all the benefits and services that they're eligible for, a follow-up consultation to identify the steps you can take now to prepare for the future, and assistance navigating the application process for Section 8 housing vouchers and other programs.
So Partners for Housing allowed us to know how important Section 8 was, the process of getting into Section 8. Whenever you work with federal and state and county government, it is a bureaucracy.
The residential assessment is an online questionnaire that you can begin today and complete at your own pace.
My first impression of the residential assessment was its absolute thoroughness. It covers so many aspects of my daughter's life. It was inspiring, it gave us courage, it gave us hope, it gave us energy to take the necessary steps to move through the process.
Partners for Housing offers additional services to help families create a shared living home. Shared living is when people with disabilities live together to share the cost of housing and services. Our roommate matching pool helps you find compatible roommates and like-minded families with similar housing goals. Our shared living development services guides families through the process of realizing their vision of a safe, supported, and resilient housing solution.
We wanted something that we could set up that would repeat itself and be able to be lasting long after we're gone.
My favorite is living with these two and the independence this has given me.
Completing a residential assessment is the first step toward identifying the resources that can make your family's unique housing goals achievable. Partners for Housing will help you with advice, recommendations, and a list of steps that you can take to prepare for the future.
Start early, and in fact, it's never too early to start.
Yeah, start the process now. My wife and I put it off for years and years and years until my wife passed away. You know, it's like they say, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today.
And she's grown in ways we didn't expect and in ways we did expect, and we're just really proud.
When we go out to see our boyfriends, we also see movies, and we would also go bowling.
So I live like 5 minutes away from my parents, so that's really nice actually.
We are actually more engaged with each other living apart. And now when he comes home on weekends that Beth is off, we play cards. There's much more social interaction between us and Jeremy, which is very delightful.
Visit www.partnersforhousing.com for more information. Take the first step toward their journey home for you, your loved one, and your entire family.
Are you happy here?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. I'm also having trouble advancing the screens. There we go. Okay. So it's really helpful when you're thinking about housing if you think about it in two parts. The cost of the rent as one, and then whatever support services you may need as a second bucket. So right now in the United States, there's not a place in our nation where a person who lives just on supplemental security income can rent a decent, safe, and affordable an apartment. That's why Section 8 housing subsidies can be so valuable. There we go. And some people need support services and affordable rent, and they need caregivers. So it can be sometimes more difficult for autistic adults to find housing than other people because you need to figure out how to combine all of those three things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Section 8. Section 8 is a housing subsidy that comes from HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. It's a federal program, and it's administered by local housing authorities. When a person has a Section 8 voucher, they pay 30% of their income toward rent and utilities, and the housing authority pays the rest up to a limit set by HUD for that particular geographical area. The biggest challenge is how do you get on Section 8 wait lists? I hear from many families, our list hasn't opened in 5 years. Last time it opened, they had 10,000 applications and did a lottery for 500 spots. So that's true. It can be very difficult to get a Section 8 voucher. But if you're a person with a disability, there's reasonable accommodation that can help you get a voucher sooner. There is a website out there. It's on the screen. It's called affordablehousing.online.com. They look at all the housing authority lists across the nation, and every week they post the ones that are going to be open. So if you go to that list, you can get your name on as many lists as you want. There's no limit to the amount of lists you can put your name on. Typically, when you get a voucher, you have to live in that particular jurisdiction for 1 year. But if you're a person with a disability, you can request reasonable accommodation to port your voucher early to a housing authority near you. So this helps a lot of families gain access to Section 8. And through our benefits and housing review process, we show families how to do this. But you can go to that Affordable Housing Online website. We recommend you keep track of the list that you get your name on. And if you need help with any paperwork, you can feel free to reach out to us. We've been working with the Section 8 program since the late 90s, and we actually help families all over the nation with that paperwork. Oops. Okay, some of the cool things when you have a Section 8 voucher that you can do is if you're a person with a disability and you need someone to live in with you, you can request reasonable accommodation to rent for a live-in caregiver, and the housing authority will pay the rent for the caregiver, and they don't consider the caregiver's income. So you would pay 30% of your income toward rent, and they would give you a 2-bedroom voucher. That's an opportunity for you to offer free rent to somebody who lives in to help support you, and it's a huge benefit for a lot of people. If you are interested in looking at all the rules around Section 8, you can do that. You might see that you're not allowed to rent from a relative, but again, with reasonable accommodation, if you're a person with a disability, you can request to rent from a relative. So sometimes families have a mother-in-law apartment or another property and they want to rent to their son or daughter, you can request accommodation to do that. And we've helped many families get those approved. Another thing is, if you have a Section 8 voucher, you can also add other people who have disabilities to your voucher. So Section 8 defines family as unrelated people with disabilities who live together. So if you had friends with disabilities and you wanted to live together, you could add them to your voucher as family members. And then as long as you were living together, they could benefit from reduced rent. So that's another great benefit. There's other accommodations that you can request. Accommodations are approved on a case-by-case basis. So they're unique to that particular person. And Section 8 can be a really valuable subsidy for people who are low income to help you afford rent. So with our process, we have a benefits and housing review. It's the first step when we're working with people to help them access housing options, understand what the housing options are and what benefits they could be eligible for, how to get on lists. If you're interested in that, feel free to go to our website, partnersforhousing.com, and you can purchase the benefits and housing review on our website. It's a $500 cost. It includes the residential assessment, the review of services, a follow-up consultation with us, and access to our roommate matching pool. For anybody who's attending today, we'll offer a discount of $100. In the coupon code there, you can just enter OAR, and that'll give you that discount. And if you have any other questions about our services, you can feel free to reach out to us. Our roommate matching pool is growing all the time. We are on the other side of the nation, so we're in the Pacific Northwest. We have about 250 people in our roommate matching pool now. Most of them are in the Washington state area, but we've also have people in our pool from Arizona, New York, Georgia, Connecticut, New Jersey, Michigan. We're expanding across the nation and our pool is growing, but really now most of the people are in the Washington area, and we're looking forward to growing across the nation, building our pool up across the nation. So feel free to reach out if you have questions. Our benefits and housing review is beneficial whether or not you go into our roommate matching pool. And we also have shared living development services. So all of those information is on our website. And I know we want to have plenty of time for questions, so I think I'll stop there. And thank you.
Thank you, Pam, and thank you, Kelsey. Kelsey, if you'd care to join us right now, we can go ahead and take a look at our questions now that we've concluded the presentations. As a reminder, everyone, you can still submit your questions in the questions pane of your control panel. Because our time is limited, we may not be able to get to all of your questions, but if we don't, we'll try to get back to you through email. So our first question that we have today is, what is shared living?
Okay, shared living. Shared living is when people live together to share the cost of housing and services. So like most people, when they move out of their family home, they need to have roommates to afford rent. For people who also need to have support services, it might be a live-in caregiver, it might be caregiver who comes in. The families might continue to provide that support, but shared living just means people with disabilities who live together to share support and the cost of housing.
Okay. And when do you recommend applying for Section 8?
That's a good question. So you need to be at least 18 to apply for Section 8. And, you know, it can take time to get on lists. So most housing authorities now use the lottery process. So they'll open their list for a certain amount of time, maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, and then they'll get as many applications as they can, and then they'll do a lottery to add so many people to their list. In the past year, we've worked with at least 15 people who got a voucher within a year using the process that we described. There's many other people that we've worked with that are getting their name on lists, and they've been waiting longer. So it's tricky to know. It's good to have, when you're ready to start thinking about moving out, it's good to start getting your name on lists. Once a voucher is issued and you port it to your local housing authority, typically you're going to have 90 to 120 days to find a place to rent. You can also request reasonable accommodation for extensions if you need a little bit more time. And during COVID, we were able to get extensions for up to a year. Typically, you're not going to get that much more. So, you know, if you're about ready in the next, you know, within the next 3 years, I would say start putting your name on lists. If you happen to get a lucky lottery number and your name comes up right away and you're not ready, you can always say, I'm not ready yet. And if you've got your name on a bunch of other lists, then you can wait for the next opportunity to come up. So it's tricky because you don't quite know when it's going to happen. It can take time, it can happen fast. So I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Kelsey, I have a question for you. What assessments do you use to evaluate and train individuals for travel training readiness?
Yes. So what I do is when I meet with someone one-on-one, I bring a list of about 10 questions that I ask everyone, and that kind of gets the conversation going of, you know, how the person is ready, what they know, what they don't know, what they need to know. And then from there, we actually, when we go out, sometimes it depends on the person, but sometimes it's just walking from your house to the bus stop. And can we do that? Sometimes it's the full trip. We go to school and we come back. And then from there, I'm taking data from every trip that we do to make sure that the person is, you know, completing all the necessary steps and remembering everything. I have a task analysis that I use. Some people who, because this is, you know, it is a joint thing. It's not just me. So there are multiple parties involved. And I always tell people it's just a conversation. And if you don't like the bus, I didn't make the bus. But that is to say that sometimes people just want a little summary at the end of every trip. And that's all that they want. That's all that they need. So I do everything, but I do make sure that all the necessary steps to make sure that everyone is safe and independent, you know, they are checked off, whether that is the task analysis or an actual, you know, just a summary of every trip.
Great, that's really wonderful. Pam, I have a question for you. Can you expand more on the process of receiving Section 8 benefits and how do vouchers fit in?
So there's a lot of paperwork to complete. So when you're applying for Section 8 to get on lists, there's probably about 12 questions that they typically ask. One of the things that they want to know is who is the head of household. So something to keep in mind is that if you are an adult and you're paying rent and you're living with but you might still be living with your parents, you are the head of your own household. So when they ask who is the head of household, it's just you. When they ask what is total household income, it's just your income. You don't include your parents' income. And when they ask about other household members, it's again just you, because you are an adult living with your parents. As you start to try to access services and Section 8 housing subsidies, you need to think about you and your parents as roommates, maybe, so that you're the head of your own household. So they're going to ask questions about that. once your name comes up on a list, they're going to send you a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of paperwork for you to complete. And sometimes that can be really overwhelming. We do consult with families to help them get through that paperwork quickly. If you want our help, we can do that, but you can also see if there's someone at the housing authority that can help you complete that paperwork. Bunch of paperwork to complete. Once you submit that, they look at your income. They want to make sure you're eligible. They're going to determine how much you're going to be responsible to pay based on your income. And then they'll issue you a voucher. And once you have the voucher in your hand, they're going to also give you what they call request for tenancy approval paperwork. That's the paperwork that you would take to any private market landlord that will accept your voucher, and they will complete their portion, send it into the housing authority. The housing authority will send somebody out to inspect to make sure it's decent, safe, and sanitary place to live and meets housing quality standards. And then once that inspection is passed, once it passes inspection, then the housing authority will begin subsidizing your rent.
Wow, that's really helpful information. Thank you. Kelsey, I have a question for you. In your area, who funds the travel training?
Great question. We are funded through the Department of Rail and Public Transit, so DRPT, in Virginia, and I apply for a 5310 grant every year. So that means that that is why I do specialize in adults with disabilities and seniors, because that is where the money is coming from. That is what the 5310 grant is for, people with disabilities and seniors. So every year we apply, and that covers the cost of my salary and any other, materials that I might need throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. Another question, I believe this one might be for Pam, I don't know if, or for both of you, but what benefits are important for independence?
So you want me to start, Kelsey? I'll start if you want. Okay. So when we're looking at benefits, if a person is eligible for supplemental security income, SSI or SSDI, we look at encourage you to apply for that. Some people might need support with some activities of daily living, like cooking, cleaning, shopping. If you need that kind of support, you might want to apply to your state agency that provides support services. Food benefits are a great thing to have and apply for. Most states have a SNAP program that you can apply for, and then Section 8 housing subsidies. So all of these help make independence more affordable, and always, of course, having roommates to share the costs make things more affordable.
Great. Kelsey, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for transportation, I always tell people, at least with our program in our area, that you have the paratransit service that if you apply for and you're found eligible, that did cost money. Right now it's free, but we don't know how long that will be free. And travel training is free. So even if people are scared of the bus, which it's a big deal to figure out how to get from point A to point B by yourself, transferring. I didn't make the bus, so I tell people just to try with me, or try with one of their friends, or try with their parent, just to give it a go. And even if they do work with me and we do work and, they have become completely independent traveling from point A to point B, if they do not like it, that's okay, at least they tried. But I have had adults, they're able to actually move out on their own because they have their transportation locked down, whether that is traveling, on our fixed route system, the one I had taught them, and maybe taking paratransit home at night. With GRTC, they can mix and mingle all of our different types of transit services. So yeah, I say just get on out there and try, because then you can maybe move out and you can live alone or with a roommate, and then you can also have your transportation figured out without relying on others or paying Uber and Lyft prices.
And I'll just add one more thing, if I could, to that, when we're looking at, people's benefits and housing reviews that they've completed, that's always something I talk about is transportation early on. Transportation is a very important independent skill. And a lot of times it's easier for mom or dad to pick you up, because you don't want to wait or you don't really feel like taking the bus. But if you're out there living with some roommates, and maybe even if you have a caregiver, they're not going to be able to drive everybody everywhere. So really practicing while you're living at home and learning how to take public transportation is really important.
Okay. Kelsey, and along the lines of what you were discussing, do you have any safety recommendations when learning to use public transportation?
So public transportation and using it is very individualized, even though I know it's a system and it's already in place, but it is very individualized to the person. Something that we always do, no matter what or who I work with, where we're going, is always to have safe locations. Whether that be if there's a McDonald's at the transfer point, you don't have to go in there, but if you are feeling unsafe, or maybe it's a bank, but they have to know that if they're traveling on Sunday, that bank's not going to be open. So just kind of walking through those different scenarios. One of the cool things about Google is that when you do set up your trip on Google Maps, and if you are using a smartphone, you can actually share your trip and your progress with someone else, so that if you're not actually always monitoring someone's location. I know a lot of parents do monitor their young adults' location on their smartphones anyway, but if you are not, you can actually share your location, maybe share it with your roommate, share it with a coworker if that's where you're going. But I will say safety is just it's so individualized that I could talk through different scenarios for the next hour.
Right. I appreciate that. Let's see if do we have any other questions? Let me take a look. Looks like we're at the end of our questions. Is there anything else that either one of you would like to add or before we close out?
I would just say that I'll throw out a few things about Section 8, a few more things about Section 8, if you'd like. So certain things are important for you to have a preference on a Section 8 wait list. So if you're not paying rent at home with your family, it's good to pay rent. Because if you are rent burdened, which means you pay more than 50% of your income toward rent, you will get a preference for Section 8. So certain preferences, people who are extremely low income, people who have a disability, people who are rent burdened. So thinking about those things as you're applying to lists across the nation just will help you move up the list faster. And when you're looking at affordablehousing.online.com, if you see something that says local preference given to people, preference given to people who live and work in our community, that just means they have a preference. Doesn't mean you can't apply to that list, because you also could have preferences, like I said, of being rent burdened, a person with disabilities, or extremely low income. So paying rent helps you qualify for Section 8. And if you go to our website or the Affordable Housing Online website, they could also identify some things that could help you move up a list faster.
Okay, thank you for that. I see we're not having any additional questions at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up for today. I want to thank you very much, both of you, for all of your information. It's been enlightening. And thank everyone else for joining us today. And if you found today's event helpful, we encourage you to check out our next webinar Unlocking Potential of Autistic Youth, a strength-based approach to empowering employment readiness through Asset and ePass. That's on Wednesday, November 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And once you close out of today's event, you will receive an exit survey, and we'd appreciate it if you'd complete that and provide your feedback. Everyone will receive a follow-up email today with a certificate of attendance. And on behalf of the Organization for Autism Research, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.